Hi everyone. So this is going to be a bit of a spontaneous video. A friend of mine asked if I could make a video talking about how I think about communication, but also including the body. So I just want to present a little framework here. Again, it's just kind of spontaneous, but hopefully this will be useful. And I'm going to begin with the body, and we put communication to one side. If I want to be comfortable in my body, of course, we all know what comfortable means. You feel comfortable or you don't. But if I sort of study my experience, my phenomenological experience, what it feels like in each moment, and if I start to build an awareness of that, there's certain particular details that I can notice that are always going to be important. So an obvious starting place is with my breath. Is my breath flowing? Is it coming and going? No problem. Well, in certain moments I hold my breath, and that's usually a signal I need to look at something. This could be because I am doing some sort of physical movement that is difficult for me, or I make an awkward movement, I start to lose my balance. That could result in an interruption of my breath. But it could also be something that comes up and emotion happens, and in the body it takes that form of the breath coming to stop. But let's just speak ideally. It would be nice if my breath was always flowing. Okay. What about my relationship to the ground? What about my support? And I'm going to include the bones of my skeleton here. Well, again, this is just very general, but I would like to feel that I am well supported, right? I would like to feel that I am upright, at least in this case, where I'm sitting up and I'm, speaking to you. I want to feel that I'm kind of lifting up and away from the ground, and that I'm not sort of sinking, slumping down. And again, you could try taking your weight over one leg and over the other. And sometimes what we find is, well, I'm better supported on one side than the other. And then we start to investigate that, right? But this is another question of my body and of my comfort. Now, how do I relate to surrounding space? Well, this is a question of perception, but there's also a feeling of space. And again, what would be nice is that I feel that I'm free to move in this space. I don't have a sense of hesitation. Now, the way I feel is also going to be affected by the literal contours of the space I'm in. If I know there's very little space over here because there's a wall, I'm not going to go in this direction with a lot of speed. And there's more space over there. That feels like I can move more freely, right? But that's a natural feeling in the body. Now, I also like to point to my relationship to sound. And again, this is going to be very different depending on the environment. But if I have a kind of a pleasant relationship to sound, that might be more like hearing music than hearing some, distracting noise. And literally what you can think about is, if a very loud sound happens, we actually contract in the ears to protect ourselves from too much sound at once. But if the sound is manageable, and in fact, if the sound is pleasant, maybe I find myself drawn into the rhythms of the environment as if I was listening to a piece of music. And then I can have a sort of a relaxed feeling in my listening. And likewise with my eyes, with my seeing, there's a way that I can sort of be, trying to grab what I'm looking at, or I can be letting what I see come to me in a way where the eyes are more relaxed. And when I move through the environment, I might find that something attracts my eyes. Okay, so these were all experiences in the body. Now let's come to communication. So I'm with a person who I like a lot. We're having a good time. Well, communication feels good. And if that's true, then it's more likely I'm going to have comfort in my body. Now, it could be that I have some physical challenge separate from, the fact that I'm here talking to this person. So we always have to know that these two things can be separate. But let's say we're having a good time, but then my friend says something that feels a little insulting to me. What happens in my body then? It could be that I hold my breath in that moment. Or it could be that I stiffen and I feel tension come in. Maybe I feel it in my face. It could be that if my friend is talking and I have something to say, and then it feels like they just don't stop. Maybe I start telling a story in my head about this, and now like the sound of their voice is no longer as pleasing to me. It's not like the loud sound out on the street that I literally go like this, but it's like I'm not welcoming the sound of their voice into my body in the same way as before. So, we could go through a lot of things here, but it's just to say that simple interaction is showing up in my body all the same signals that have to do with just being well balanced, having good posture, having easy breathing, feeling that I can move my body, move my joints in a good way. There's a way that the experience I have in conversation is rippling through my body as well. And of course, a very important piece too is the stories in my head. So if I'm really connected to my friend when they're talking, ideally I probably am not thinking about anything. I'm literally like thinking their words as I'm listening as if I was walking in step with my friend speaking. My friend pauses for a moment to sort of, what's the thing I'm trying to say? They're looking for the words. I would actually feel that pause in my body as the listener. And I'm sort of like with them, on the adventure of the unfolding meaning of what they're saying. And so I just think that these two sides of the coin, they tend to get separated. So a lot of people are aware of projection, when someone just labels you as if they know who you are and they say, you're always like that. And you realize that feels like a violence, that feels like, you're telling me who I am, but you don't know who I am. And that we have a sense that we don't like that. But that instantly shows up in the body as well. Or there's the person on the other side of the coin who really listens to you, right? And you say that thing that you're not sure what they're going to think about it. And lo and behold, they're still there. They're still with you. They haven't judged you for it. This can actually lead to a sense of expansiveness, right? Because if I'm afraid that you're not going to like me for what I'm going to say, who I am, what I'm revealing about myself, I might be a little pulled in. The more that I see that you're accepting me, the more I actually can feel like in a physical way almost, or a somatic sense, my body can be larger. So these metaphors, they're a little more literal, I think, than sometimes we realize. And so likewise, I can be with a person and I realize that I am subtly pulling back, right? Even though I'm there with them, it's as if my overall tendency is to lean back rather than to lean in. And so these are the kinds of things that if I do the kind of work that we generally call body awareness practice, different ways of just knowing my body better, these same questions can come up in my interaction with another person. Now, I'll just add this one last idea here, because some people who are familiar with me know I talk about the musicality of being. And one way of thinking of the musicality of being is it really is this intersection between embodiment and relationship. So when we're talking, when we're with each other, something's moving, something's changing, something is dynamic, like music. There's you and then there's me. There's an interaction. So as I'm making this video, I'm the only person who's speaking, but you can pick up that, these hand movements I'm making, or I speak and then I pause, there's a rhythm here, right? So if you were to listen, if my voice was pleasant enough for you, and you kind of hear you hear my voice also as musical, not just as here is some words to tell you something for you to understand, right? But there's this whole dance that we're doing. This is where we can get into the question of, are we making music together? And I like to play with that metaphor by noticing there's a rhythm, right? There's a melody. The melody could be like these phrases that come out of my mouth and then they stop. And then there's another one, right? These little phrases. And it could also be harmony. And that is the simultaneity of us together, right? So if you're very tired and I don't really notice and I'm very excited and being really loud and energetic, well, there's a mismatch there, right? We're not exactly in harmony. But if I kind of pick up on that and I say, oh, you seem a little tired, and I kind of adapt to your energy, we can come into more of a harmony. So the thing is just that there's a way that embodiment and these questions of relationality, they can begin to interface, and we can start to listen to them together. We can start to put them together. So this is as I said, a very spontaneous presentation. I just wanted to sort of respond to a friend who was asking me to talk about some of these questions. So I'd be really curious what came up for you. Maybe there's something that you'd like to hear me explain a little further. Just putting that out there, and curious to find out what you think. So thanks for listening.